Professor Hsien Loong, President of the Economic Society of Singapore, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me back to the ESS annual dinner. The last time I attended your annual dinner was in 1993. Sorry, 2003, not quite so long ago. We had then just emerged from a recession, and we were fighting an invisible enemy called SARS. The Economic Review Committee had published its report not long ago before that. So at dinner, when I spoke, I outlined how we could transform Singapore into a dynamic global city. Some ideas to think about. The decade since then has been eventful. We experienced many ups and downs, particularly during the global financial crisis, when our economy plunged and then recovered more suddenly than we ever imagined possible. This roller coaster ride gave Singaporeans many anxious moments. Overall, since 2003, we've averaged 6.7% growth per year, faster than we had expected. But Singaporeans are also feeling the side effects in daily stresses and strains: more crowding in public places, housing and public transport falling behind the needs of a growing population, frictions between locals and new arrivals. I understand Singaporeans' frustrations, and I'm committed to resolving them. We are building more HDB flats and improving bus and train services. We're helping workers to improve their skills and cope with the changing job market. We are slowing down the inflow of foreign workers and immigrants and discussing our population policies with all Singaporeans. It will take some time. There are no easy solutions, but we are making progress. We are determined to overcome these problems and to improve Singaporeans' lives. But even as we tackle these pressing issues, we need to look beyond them and ask some basic questions about our future. Where do we stand today compared to other advanced countries? What will the world be like 20 years from now? And where does Singapore want to be in that future world? So where are we today? In quantitative terms, our economy has performed well. In terms of per capita GDP, we are at slightly above $50,000 last year, and according to the IMF, if you look at the chart, we are placed 11th worldwide, ahead of the USA. If you adjust for purchasing power parity, then the per capita GDP ranks even higher. In fact, we are third overall, behind only Qatar and Luxembourg. But despite these impressive numbers, we have far from arrived. First of all, we are comparing Singapore with other countries. And if you compare with countries rather than cities, it flatters us. Because Singapore is completely urbanized, whereas bigger countries have rural areas and backward districts. And even advanced countries like the US have places which are not doing so well. And their leading cities usually are much wealthier than their national averages. So if you compare Singapore not with countries but with global cities, then you will find something closer to the truth, and you will discover that we actually have a long way to go. Brookings actually did a study of global cities, which were the leading cities in the world, highest per capita GDP, and which were the ones not doing so well. And they listed the top 20 and the bottom 20. Singapore is not in the top 20. So our per capita GDP, compared to cities like Oslo, Paris, New York, London, San Francisco, San Jose, we are behind them by quite a lot. We are not even in the top 20 cities worldwide. The chart doesn't show all 20 of them, it shows you a few, but most of them are in the North America or in Western Europe. So that's the first flattering. We are comparing with countries and we look good. Secondly, even though our per capita GDP is high, our wages are generally lower than in the developed countries. Over the last decade, median wages have risen in Singapore in real terms. Unlike in other countries where they have often been stagnant, or even gone down. But even then, we remain significantly behind other countries in terms of productivity and in terms of wages. And it's because if we look at the structure of our GDP, a much larger share than in other countries goes towards profits, and income. Wages accounts for only 42% of our GDP, compared to maybe 60% in the developed countries. It's structural. Thirdly, Singapore is a small city-state without the strategic ballast of the bigger and more mature economies. The hinterland, the rural areas, the agricultural zones bring down the per capita GDP but give the developed countries a certain stability and endurance. We will always be vulnerable to the vagaries of external events, as the global financial crisis vividly reminded us. And we must always fend for ourselves. No one will bail us out if we falter. In Europe, if you are a small country, there's hope of the European Union. In Asia, there's no Asian Union. And in a rapidly changing world, this is one fact that will not change for Singapore. So, we still have much work to do to assure ourselves of a brighter tomorrow. But what will tomorrow be like? What will the world be like 20 years from now? Nobody can predict exactly how events will unfold, but there are several trends which we can see clearly already, which will inevitably affect the landscape and shape the landscape which we will experience over the next 2 decades. Globalization will continue, barring extreme scenarios such as a war. More economic integration will generate greater prosperity for many countries, but it also has its downsides. Shocks will be transmitted more quickly and widely. Economic cycles will become shorter and more unpredictable, and the potential for worldwide contagion will be much greater, whether through financial crisis or through global pandemics. The developed countries will gradually recover from the current crisis, though each will continue to have its own problems for some time. European countries troubled by the Eurozone's structural flaws. US by its fiscal deficits and its social security and healthcare spending. And Japan by its aging and shrinking population. The emerging economies will continue to grow in importance, even though their paths will not be smooth. And the emerging economies will include not just China and India, but countries in Latin America, and even if you take a 20-year time frame, quite likely some countries in Africa. In our own region, our ASEAN partners, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, or Vietnam, will become more prosperous, with bigger populations and larger roles in regional and international affairs. The leading cities, the Brookings list, and cities like that, will continue to attract capital and talent in a globalized world. And the capital and talent which they get will in turn attract more of the same, transforming these cities into even more vibrant centers for business, for ideas, and for influence. Cities like New York, Munich, and London, they can prosper even if the countries they happen to be in are not doing so well, because they are more tied to the global economy. And I think some of that is happening. You can see it in London today. Prospering, looking forward to exciting things like the Olympics, even though Britain as a whole has many problems. In the emerging economies, cities like Shanghai and Mumbai it's not likely that their income levels will have caught up with the developed countries, but the buzz and the excitement and the thrill of being in the middle of a rapidly changing region will make them even more exciting places to live and work in. Globalization and technology will widen income distributions all over the world. You can see this trend in many developed countries, from capitalist USA to socialist France. I've put up a chart. Don't look at the fine print, just look at the general shape of the curves. The curves represent half a dozen countries: the US, UK, Canada, France, Australia, Netherlands, Sweden. And they show you the big trend. Since the early 20th century, incomes were becoming more equal. Inequality was declining. Welfare was being improved in the developed countries. Roosevelt had the New Deal. The Europeans, after the First World War and after the Second World War, they rolled out the welfare state. Things progressively got more equal. And it bottomed out about 1980, and then that model reached its limits, and a right-wing trend came in. Economies liberalized, reformed, opened up. They grew more rapidly. Inequality widened steadily in all the countries, whether it's the US and UK, which were more free market, or even France, which is more dirigiste, or Sweden, which started from very, very socialist dispensation and have gradually been liberalizing the arrangements over the last couple of decades. So this is a global trend, and we are now in a phase where inequality is growing and will continue to grow. Talented and enterprising individuals will continue to earn a high premium, and pressure will grow on the lower end, where it already is, but also on jobs in the middle, because competition is intensifying globally and because technology is moving and encroaching on jobs which traditionally needed white-collar workers, human intelligence to work on, and now can be done with software and robots. So inequality will grow worldwide, angst and social pressures will likely go up. This is the backdrop to our question: where do we want to be in 20 years' time? Do we want Singapore to be up among the global cities, or do we want to remain where we are today as the world moves ahead? I believe that if Singaporeans think of our future from this broader perspective, most of us will decide that we want to be among the leading cities of the world. These cities are not standing still. They are moving ahead, so must we. Being near the front means that Singaporeans can enjoy a quality of life comparable to what people in the advanced countries will be enjoying 20 years from now. If they can do it, we want to be able to do it. Being near the front means that our children can look forward to better lives than our generation. Being near the front also includes softer and intangible aspects of nationhood. Singaporeans showing more grace and compassion to one another, more dedicated and passionate volunteers contributing to a better society, greater appreciation of the arts and of our cultural and historical heritage. All these aspects are intangible but important. And in all of them, I think we are pleased with ourselves, but we will still admit we can do a lot better than we are doing today. Beyond these broad aspirations, what tomorrow's Singapore will be like is for all Singaporeans to imagine, to create together. A new generation is growing up, brimming with fresh ideas and energy on how to change Singapore for the better. With imagination and hard work, we can turn vision into reality and ensure that Singapore continues to be the best home for us all and a shining red dot that we will all be proud of. But being near the front also means that we must have a successful and growing economy. There's no other way you can do this. We cannot do it by spending what we have inherited from the previous generation. We certainly cannot do it by pumping oil and gas out of the ground. And we can only do it if our economy is prospering and creating wealth that we can invest in our city and our people to make life better for all of us. We will work hard to grow, but Singapore cannot avoid growing more slowly in the next decade and beyond that. It's natural because we are now more developed and are running up against land and labor constraints. I have a chart here showing each decade, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, our average real growth rate in Singapore during that 10-year period. And you can see it gradually trending down. And I think this trend will continue. It's happened to all the developed countries. It will happen to us too. Land and labor constraints are a factor. Reducing the inflow of foreign workers will influence this. Plus, competition is fiercer, not only from hundreds of millions of hungry workers in the emerging economies, but also from new technologies that will transform industries all over the world. I know that some Singaporeans welcome the prospect of growing more slowly. In fact, some go further and want us to grow even more slowly than what our economy is potentially capable of. Slow down, relax. Don't press so hard on material success. They argue that we already have enough material success and that we should give less weight to economic factors and more to social considerations. And we should spend also more on ourselves and our generation and put aside less for the future. I respect these views. I agree fully that material goals are not everything in life, but we are not going for growth at all costs, nor have we done so. Growth is not an end in itself, but a means to improve our lives and achieve many of our other goals. And we've always got to maintain the balance between economic and non-economic objectives and ensure that the fruits of growth, enough of it, is invested for social purposes which benefit our society and the wider population. But nevertheless, without growth, we have no chance of improving our collective well-being. Growing too fast generates growth pains and stresses and strains. Growing too slow produces many other serious headaches. And far more countries in the world are worried and vexed about growing too slowly than about growing too fast. For Singapore, growing too slowly will mean new investments will be fewer, good jobs will be scarcer, and unemployment will rise. Enterprising and talented individuals, Singaporeans amongst them, will be lured away by opportunities and the incomes they can get in other more exciting countries. And those who can't leave and the lower income Singaporeans and workers will be the hardest hit, which is what has happened each time our economy slowed down over the last decades. And over time, the mood will change, our confidence will be dented, and we will be in a different problem. Thoughtful Americans have told me that this is one of the major challenges for the US after years of slow growth. A profound loss of optimism and even confidence. The same is true for Japan, and the same will be true of Singapore too, if our economy stagnates. Beyond the issue of resources and the need to invest in ourselves, there is this question of spirit. We've been successful precisely because we have not taken success for granted. As Andrew Grove of Intel used to say, and he wrote a book about it, only the paranoid survive. Our sense of vulnerability and our consciousness of the competition that we face are important parts of the Singapore psyche. That we are small, that we have no other resources than our manpower, that we have to defend ourselves and tomorrow it may rain hard. We drum this into everybody and we believe it because it's true. Changi Airport strives to be the best airport in the world. It doesn't aim to be the number 2 airport in the world. Singapore too, as a country, must aim to be outstanding. If we just set our ambition to be above average in the League of Cities, then we will fail. And that is the greatest danger if we tell ourselves, let's slow down, enjoy life today, don't worry about tomorrow. I am confident that the Singapore economy can remain vibrant and dynamic, provided we work together and we set ourselves to it. We have the ability to invest in our workforce, in every worker, and to catch up with the developed countries in our productivity and our skills. We have very strong tripartite cooperation, and I think our people have the will to upgrade and to adapt. We are open and confident, and we embrace talent and enterprise from around the world, even as we nurture Singaporeans to our fullest potential. Our reserves are a valuable buffer against external shocks, and they give us a confidence to take risks and transform the economy. And not many other cities or countries in the world can claim this list of advantages. But our vision of a global city cannot be defined by absolute economic numbers alone. It also has to be measured by how widely the society benefits. And Singapore has been a success because growth has benefited all. And it's crucial that our growth continues to benefit all over the next 20 years. But it's also more challenging for us to do this because incomes are becoming less equal worldwide and because our population is aging and we will face social stresses and strains. Every society has to strike a balance between individual rewards and social equity. Where to strike the balance and how best to do it, each country has to work out and decide for itself. Our approach has been, firstly, to promote enterprise and create wealth and jobs rather than merely redistribute a smaller pie. Secondly, to foster social cohesion by investing in every child and helping all Singaporeans equip themselves for good jobs, and also helping all Singaporeans to own their own homes. Thirdly, to encourage self-reliance wherever possible, including savings for one future, rather than a sense of entitlement. And this approach has served us well. Some critics argue that we don't do enough for the less fortunate. The reality is that we do much more than we acknowledge or get credit for. We're doing it quietly. We are afraid that people think that we can do even more, and so we hide our light under the bushel. But actually, we are not doing a little. We are doing a lot. We recognize that not everyone will do equally well, and we've developed social safety nets and transfers, especially for the low income and elderly. In the past 5 years, transfers have added 1/5 to the earnings of low-income households. And if you add up all the government programs, the house, the transfers, the special schemes, and take it on a household basis and project it over a lifetime, then a low-income household in a lifetime can expect to receive more than $500,000 from the government. $500,000 in real terms, today's dollars, in different forms, and not a small sum. But one difference between Singapore and other countries is that we have emphasized boosting people's assets more than their incomes. And one asset in particular, HDB flats. Our HDB program has been a major means of uplifting our people. The large majority of Singaporeans own their own homes, including low-income households, and they've used their CPF savings, which we have enabled them to have, and we've also helped them with very generous subsidies from the state. And in recent years, we've gone further with the state subsidies to increase them and target them at the lower end through what different schemes, we call them the additional housing grant, the special housing grant, many different initials, but basically a very substantial support to bring low-income Singaporeans to a more equal starting line in life. And in fact, if you look at the lowest quintile of households, the bottom 20% of households, on average, each household has as equity in his flat. That means what's the value of the flat he owns minus how much money he still hasn't paid up. Each household has, on average, $200,000 worth of equity in a flat. And that's a direct result of government policy and government grants. And it's unmatched in any other country, but unfortunately, these capital grants do not show up in our Gini coefficient. Therefore, to assess the well-being of low-income Singaporeans, we can't just look at nominal wages. Nominal wages are lower in Singapore than in some other developed countries, and we know that in the next phase, we must do more to raise wages at the lower end. Skills upgrading and sharing productivity gains fairly with workers are key to this, because you want to enable them to earn more on their own abilities. Tightening up on unskilled foreign workers will also help. And so will progressively enhancing workfare, which offers the same benefits but some advantages over a statutory minimum wage. We can't simply push up wages by command overnight. We order it so and we get there. Even the North Koreans can't do that. But we can and we must, through concerted and sustained efforts, improve the earnings of our workers over time. Beyond wages and workfare, we will strengthen our social safety nets. This year's budget marks a significant new beginning. We introduced many schemes, launched many schemes, that will become part of our social protection system for the long term. Support to low-income households like the GST vouchers. Help for middle-income families, such as subsidies for home-based medical care. And we will progressively build on these schemes. It will cost the government significantly more in social spending, but I believe it's necessary and justified. Some critics of our approach propose the Scandinavian model as a more egalitarian and humane initiative. And there's indeed much that we can learn and should learn from the Scandinavian societies, such as their pro-family policies and their success in nurturing global companies. But there are basic differences between Singapore and Scandinavia in our strategic situations and our approaches to growth and equity. We face, each of us, a fundamental choice as a society. Do we want low taxes and targeted welfare benefits, or high taxes on all and comprehensive welfare? You can have one or the other, you can't mix and match. Low taxes and we target the welfare benefits, or high taxes on all, not just on a minority of rich people. And then you have comprehensive universal welfare. Singapore has chosen the first, Scandinavians have chosen the second. And the Scandinavian model works for them, adjusted from time to time, because the Scandinavians have very different societies than we do. And developed Europe, where Scandinavia is a very different region from emerging Asia. The Scandinavians are rich in natural resources. We can't pump oil and gas out of the ground. Several Scandinavians can, out of the sea. And they have a large and affluent continent as a hinterland and a major market. And they live in a stable and peaceful continent and can safely spend much less than we do on defense. They have very long histories as homogeneous societies. so their members are willing to pay high taxes in exchange for social protections for all. I do not believe that Singaporeans would be willing to pay the taxes that Scandinavians pay, or that Singapore's economy can be competitive at such heavy tax rates. And I just put up for comparison just 3 sample numbers. 3 columns: personal taxes at the top rate, personal taxes on median income earners, and their VAT rate, value-added tax, our GST rate, goods and services tax. 5 Scandinavian countries, Singapore at the bottom. And Singapore is at the bottom not just so that you can see it, but because on every column we are half or less than half of what the Scandinavians are. For direct taxes, personal tax, their top rates are around 50%, we are at 20%. For the median worker, Scandinavians pay 20-30% of taxes. The median Singapore worker pays 0 income tax. When it comes to VAT and GST, Scandinavians pay 25%, we pay 7%. Will Singaporeans be prepared to move from row 6 to row 2? I doubt it. Of course, without being as generous as the Scandinavians, we could still increase our social spending and raise our taxes moderately as part of a new social compact. And within limits, that's indeed what we need to do in the longer term, with an aging population and growing healthcare costs and needs. But the limits on us are tighter than many people realize. For decades, we have gradually reduced our income tax rates and partially made up with indirect taxes like the GST, only partially made up, in order to stay competitive with other Asian economies like Hong Kong. So it's a matter of policy choice that we've brought our taxes down, especially direct taxes, but it's also a matter of making a virtue out of necessity, because we needed to bring our tax rates down to stay competitive and to enable our economy to grow and to attract investments. And this has worked. It has fostered growth and increased the resources available to strengthen our social compact. If we turn around and raise taxes, we are going in the opposite direction. And we will run into trouble long before we reach the Scandinavian model. We run in Singapore an exceptionally lean system of government. The whole government expenditure is 17% of GDP, including defense. If you compare that with the European countries, they spend typically 45-50% of GDP. In a country like Italy, the state pensions alone will be almost as big as our entire government expenditure, 15% of GDP. Our tax revenues are 15% of GDP, and then we need 2% more, and we top that up from returns from investing our past reserves, or what in our jargon we call net investment returns. As we enhance our social safety nets, which we are doing, expenditure will inexorably rise, and revenue must keep up. At some point, not in this term of government, but surely within the next 20 years, the government of the day will need new sources of revenue, which means raising taxes. I hope that when this becomes necessary, the government of the day will have the courage to do it, and the electorate will understand why it's in everyone's interest to do so. Because otherwise, spending can go up, revenues can't match, and slowly, eventually, we will end up like the Southern Europeans or like the US. We are a long way from that, but we have to proceed very carefully. Because benefits once given can never be taken away. Not just in a democracy, but in any country. Once given, the sense that I'm entitled to this, you owe it to me, is very deep. Spending is popular but raising money to pay for spending is not. One wins votes, one loses votes. For all our good intentions, the ever-present danger is that step by imperceptible step, over time, good intentions will morph or mutate into unintended outcomes. As Dr. Goh Keng Swee once observed of welfare systems, their conception is always immaculate, but the ultimate results are often quite different. Whatever we do, we must uphold and strengthen the spirit of self-reliance that has enabled us to succeed. We will always give Singaporeans the means and the incentives to help themselves, because personal effort and achievement are essential to that sense of dignity and self-worth, and the means to achieve our vision of becoming a leading global city. I focus mainly on economic issues this evening because you are the Economic Society of Singapore, but in fact, politics underpins our economic and social choices. For Singapore to rank among the top global cities in 20 years' time, and to achieve the social objectives that we hold dear, our politics must work. Because only when citizens accept the political system as legitimate and the economic order as fair will they give the government the support and the mandate to run Singapore in their best interests. And only with this mandate can the government do the best for Singapore and for all of us. We need to build public consensus to support sound policies and wise and capable leaders. It's easier to do when growth is high, incomes are rising across the board, and the rising tide lifts all boats, as was the case in the first 40-odd years of our independence. It becomes harder when growth is lower, incomes rise unequally, and dividing up the pie becomes more contentious. And it's almost impossible to do when the economy is shrinking, policies are malfunctioning, and there's no way for the population to avoid severe pain. Under extreme stress, the political consensus fractures. We see this playing out in many European countries today, and even in Japan. More than a dozen European governments have fallen since the financial crisis began, and their successors have not had an easier time doing what is necessary to do. Singapore is beyond the phase of effortless growth. As we venture into the next phase of our development, Singaporeans have to understand what's achievable, what the options are, and what trade-offs we have to make. Only then can we collectively choose an optimal path forward. And the Economic Society of Singapore can help and should help to forge this consensus. You can help to bring home to the public the reality of global competition and the facts about Singapore's strengths and vulnerabilities. You should help to explain how economies work and why policies which appear counterintuitive can nevertheless be the right ones. You can foster a constructive debate grounded on fact and reason, and you can help us make considered collective choices based on clearly defined trade-offs and long-term objectives. The way ahead for us is challenging, but we have reason to be confident. The odds were longer at independence, but we overcame them and more than survived and thrived. We are in an enviably strong position today, with our world-class workforce, a stable society, and well-educated generation of young people. For the first time in our history, right on our doorstep, we have the world's fastest growing economies, and biggest soon. And I'm confident that by working together, we can build a strong economy in Singapore, an inclusive society, and a cohesive nation, and make this one of the leading cities in the world for the next 20 years and beyond. Thank you very much.